Headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.
Yet again, more efforts, more sanctions. Early in the week, we heard about, hundreds more Russians, some, Russian foreign minister spokespeople and some more oligarchs being sanctioned. First of all, is enough being done on that front? And how will we stop Russian oligarchs abusing the court to silence critics? Talk us through that policy.
There are two different points there, aren't there? I think the absolutely central thing to remember with sanctions is that for all the bluster, they are a hugely flawed tool. Yeah, we're making an awful lot of noise about sanctions, but our record on enforcing sanctions is absolutely pitiful. And that's partly because there's very little will to do so, or there has been in the past, partly because the agencies that are supposed to enforce this stuff are hopelessly under-resourced, especially when compared to the oligarchs themselves. But the crucial thing is this insane idea that has become so prevalent that we don't even notice it anymore, that you can participate in the UK economy or any major economy in disguise. If you or I, Julia, went to a bank this afternoon and tried to open a bank account without giving our name, you could imagine how far we'd get. But if you're rich and influential enough, you can walk the global economy with your billions and billions that you've looted from some woebegone place, Russia or elsewhere, and you don't have to identify yourself. Now, that is a sort of, no one's ever voted for that. It's never been in any political party's manifesto. This is a sort of monstrous offshoot of the global economy that's become so widespread, we're maybe inured to it. But that is the root of how corrupt rulers like Putin hold power.
Yeah. And why we allow it? I mean, I'm showing my age here, but I always think if you can spend billions in this country as a foreign national, showing less ID than I needed to get a Blockbuster card and take a video out back in the 80s, that is saying that there's something horribly wrong, isn't it?
Or a UK national, I would just add. It's equal opportunity secrecy, and it's not privacy, right? This isn't someone's reasonable expectation of privacy. This is secrecy by which corrupt billions are being shifted into our economy.
But a lot of people are arguing over the last week or two on this, and I think making a very fair point that this has been flagged up as a problem for a very long time. We're not. It's not like no one noticed there was all this Russian money. I've talked about it on my show many times over the years. We've got massive issues with Chinese money as well. Lots of Middle Eastern money buying up really well-known things like Harrods, for goodness sake. The thing is, everyone's saying, and I think quite rightly, well, everyone knew about this and it wasn't stopped. That tells us that people didn't want it stopped. Is there a really serious issue that actually Russian money, and indeed other countries' billions, are so awash in our establishment, and that's not just politics but media, our education establishments, our cultural establishments, donations? We've seen some of the problems that Prince Charles has got himself into with some Middle Eastern billionaires offering him money, that actually it's not in the interest of the establishment or politicians to throw that money out.
I mean, yes, I would agree with all of that. I would say that, and this goes back to something you touched on earlier, that there have been people who have been keen to find and unearth this corrupt money buried in the UK. So, I mean, some of it walks through the front door, as you say, into political parties and so on. But there's a lot of it that's hidden. And the people who've been doing a lot of work to discover that money have been investigative journalists in the UK and elsewhere. But what do they find when they try to expose this money? That it's not, by and large, that they get bumped off like our poor colleagues in Russia or Malta. It's not that they're subject to some terrifying cyber attack, or at least not all the time. No, the biggest obstacle to exposing this dirty money, which, as you rightly say, whether from Russia or the Gulf or West Africa or wherever it may be from, is poisonous to our own democracy. The biggest obstacle is law firms based in London who have vast influence, completely unseen, over what we get to read, because they deploy such firepower, both their oligarch clients' massive wealth and their own vast costs, to intimidate the press into not covering this area, to the point that, as you rightly say, it's gone, in many cases, completely unreported.
Well, and again, you recently won a court case over exactly just this. Well, the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has promised to tackle what he described as the chilling effect of a new kind of lawfare, he calls it, not warfare, lawfare, being used by the super rich who can afford to threaten legal action. I mean, we had that with super injunctions for a bit, didn't we, over stories? But again, those were, tittle-tattle about people's private lives, not quite such serious issues as this. But, I mean, there is always a danger, though, because we want people to be able to use the court system, judicial system. It needs to apply to everybody. But there's a very fine balance between what we allow people to do and what is reasonable restriction.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's really important that this remains balanced. What we're saying is that the system at the moment is ridiculously unbalanced. The legal attack on my book, Kleptopia, was brought on an absurd legal ground. And my brilliant publicist, HarperCollins, stood strong. My newspaper, the FT, did too. HarperCollins could have lost more than £1 million. Imagine how many books that would have been that wouldn't have been published. The point here is the use of it's kind of lawfare by costs, so that the sheer volume of money that can be deployed. So the reforms that are required, in which really hearteningly MPs and it appears the government are starting to look seriously at, are about making sure that genuine public figures of great influence, great wealth, receive the proper scrutiny and cannot just use that wealth to abuse the legal system. It's not about preventing scrapping libel laws or anything like that. It's about preventing these things called strategic lawsuits against public participation. So the way the legal system is abused to combat, to silence the free press, very specifically. And there are a handful of measures that the government, I think, is going to look at that could really make a difference.
Indeed. Well, look, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Tom Burgis, investigations correspondent at the FT and also author of Kleptopia.
Good talk.
Hot talk. Bold talk. Talk radio.
Listen on your smart speaker.
Watch it live on your smart TV.
The world headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.